everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Looking for the perfect weekend getaway? Love Lansing like a local. And we promise, you'll love Lansing just as much as we do.
You're watching My Michigan TV.
It's time for Lehto Live. Join author, historian, radio host, and YouTube sensation Steve Lehto as he breaks down Michigan's top stories, talks with business leaders and professional experts, and checks out the variety of statewide festivals and events that Michigan has to offer. You're watching Lehto Live on My Michigan TV.
And welcome back. I wasn't here Monday or Tuesday. I apologize. I had a little bit of an issue, a cold, I think. I don't know. I went to the Autorama on Saturday. We'll talk about that in a second. Sunday, I started feeling a little bit under the weather as the day progressed. By Sunday night, I had a bit of a cough, a bit of a chest thing going, but it wasn't like a full-blown cold. And so on Monday morning, I got up and I had no voice, which kind of makes it, I can't do this show. I mean, I can sit here and mime, but I don't think people would enjoy it any. So I called in sick, and Jared and Dave said, "That's okay, Steve. We just want you to get better." And Tuesday morning, it was getting better, but not quite. And this morning, I'm almost all better. I have some slight issues right now. I do have cold medicine in my system, so I think I'll get through, but we'll see. But I'm trying hard not to cough. That's the main thing, is the urge to cough is there. And I think the urge is simply there because it's a remnant. It's a relic of the illness I had. But I don't know. It was the weirdest thing. Most colds take longer than that. It certainly wasn't the flu. No achiness. No, other symptoms. Just literally a cough and a little bit of runny nose. So I'll survive, and I'm back. So thank you very much for having me. Now I'm going to tell you, Saturday, I went to the Autorama. I've been to the Autorama many times in my life. Did it a lot as a kid, especially in high school with my brothers and stuff. And I went a few more times as an adult, and I went this past Saturday. And so I went to the Autorama at Cobo Hall, and I walked around and took a smattering of pictures. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the photographs I took and why I took them, because I was actually thinking, what will I want to talk about with my audience today? So here, for instance, is a beautiful car. You'll notice that, of course, is a Mopar. I'm talking about the one in the forefront of the picture, not the one in the back, although that's also a Mopar. And then there's, I think, a Mustang over there that's white. But the car in the front that's kind of orangish, reddish, I like to point this up because this is the kind of thing that you see at the Autorama. It's a classic late 60s, I believe, a Plymouth. But here's the deal. You'll notice that the hood is missing. The hood is missing to make room for that engine. Now, you could order a Hemi on that car. And that car, by the way, is a very, very beautiful car with a Hemi in it. But you know it's a Hemi because the valve covers have the holes in the center for the spark plugs. Okay, so that's a Hemi, 426 Hemi most likely, although it could be, I don't know, it's modified maybe. But sitting on top of the engine, the reason they can't put a hood on that car is there's a blower. That's a blower. Sometimes called a blower, but it's also a supercharger technically. There's a big old belt that goes up and around that powers the impeller inside that thing. And then those three things on top are air intakes. So air goes in there very, very fast, goes down through the impellers and gets jammed into the Hemi so it can create more power. And so what you see at the Autorama is a lot of cars like this that have been modified, and they are somebody's fantasy car. Like, okay, You have the car, it's got a Hemi in it. Okay. Yeah, but it's not quite enough power. I want more power. I want more power. What do I do then? Well, let's take the hood off and drop a blower in there and see if that helps. So the funny thing about a car like this is it'll drive on the street, I'm sure. Okay. You hear a supercharger, they make a very, very high-pitched whine that you cannot miss. You'd recognize the whine. Once you hear it, you'll never forget it. So it probably creates a lot of horsepower. And when you stomp on it, it probably generates a lot of noise. But I've spoken to guys who own cars like this. They talk about how hard it is to drive them in traffic because you can't see past the engine without leaning one way or the other. And I've had guys tell me, they say, yeah, I have to drive with a spotter. And I always tell my passenger, by the way, your job is to spot things that I may have to avoid that would be in that lane over there because I can't see over there. So that's one of the cars I wanted to show you, but I've got more. And we will cycle through them as I talk about them. And again, at the Autorama, you see all kinds of stuff, but almost all of it is American made. I saw very, very few foreign cars there. In fact, I'd been there for a while before I looked around and said, whoa, there's no foreign cars. Then I saw a couple, but I did see pretty much a lot of American muscle. So American muscle could be anything from, say, a Corvette like this to, a Hellcat or something. But the reason I took this photograph is you walked in the front door of the Autorama and you see this beautiful Corvette. Okay, it's a beautiful Corvette. The photo does not do it justice. This is the nicest paint job I've ever seen in my life, bar none. I've been to the Louvre. I've been to DIA. This right here is the most beautiful painted thing on earth. I stopped and I was looking at it going, how did they get that paint job that good? It was bright. It was shiny. It looked like it had depth, like it wasn't paint on the surface of something. The red was like the I don't know how to describe it, but the car, I mean, I understand that it is a fiberglass body. I know that, okay? But it was almost like, no, the body is just red. It's the embodiment of the color. I was standing there just in awe, as everyone else was, looking at this car going, I can't believe that paint job. How did they get that paint so red? And I assure you that somebody woke up one morning a while back and said, I've got this little red Corvette. I want to make it to where people are stunned by it when they walk by it and go, whoa. And I've seen red Corvettes before. I'm telling you that right now. I've never seen one that looked this good. And it was awe-inspiring. And I remember just stopping, looking at it and going, oh my gosh, I've seen cars before. I've seen red cars before. I've seen red Corvettes before. Never had I seen a paint job this good. So this is one of the cars that was featured up front, as were a few other cars I took pictures of. But the paint on that car, and again, I took a photograph to show you from the Autorama, but the photograph does not do it justice. And I literally just stopped and stared. And by the way, if they put that paint on any other car, it would have worked as well. But it was a great paint job on a great car. So that's one of the ones I had to take a picture of as I was walking through. And I'm like, wow, I hope that translates well when I put that up on the screen. So, I mean, it's a beautiful car on top of that. I mean, I like that era of Corvette. But the red is what really made that work. So, like I said, we're going to be going through some pictures here. I got a whole bunch, but I specifically took photographs that I wanted to illustrate at certain points. I said before the Autorama that if you go there, you'll often see people who put mirrors underneath their cars. Now, this is obviously a Chevelle. And so, if you like that Chevelle, that's great. That's a common blue color that you see those Chevelles in. I actually like a year or two later than this. If I had to pick, this is 69, obviously. I'm guessing it's a 427 based on the license plate. But the guy put a mirror underneath there so that you can walk by and look in the engine compartment and see an engine that is so clean, as they say, you could eat off of it. Okay? But without making you get on your hands and knees and crawl like a reptile, he puts a mirror there so you can just look and go, oh, wow, look at the underside of that car. And I saw so many cars at this show where they had the mirrors underneath them. I saw some that were jacked up almost at a 45, so you walk by and just look. But these guys spend years restoring these cars and rebuilding them and making everything perfect. And then they roll it into the Cobo Hall. And then they spend like a day before the show opens polishing and cleaning. And I mean, I'm talking about literally underneath the car where regular humans don't normally see things, and cleaning the nuts and bolts and the dust. And I mean, it's so hard to imagine, but it's always good that there are people out there like that, because they're the ones who are on the edge of showing you how beautiful these cars can be. And keep in mind that car right there, 1969. That's a fairly old car. You know, I mean, I remember seeing them on the streets when they were brand new. I'm not saying I'm that young, but that car is actually quite old. And a car like that, especially if it's in Michigan, although I'm not sure if it came from Michigan, but it looks like it could have. Many of those cars wound up by the side of the road, then in junkyards. So that's a beautiful example. Like I said, that's the example of the guys with the mirrors underneath their cars. So I got some more stuff we can look at here as we go along. Spent a couple hours there. Actually got recognized by somebody. Hey, Steve Lehto, you're the guy off the internet. Yes, I am. Thank you. Now, that right there is not the real Monkey Mobile. That is a replica of the Monkey Mobile, I'm pretty sure. And the reason I say that is it has a Michigan plate on it. And I've seen that before at the Woodward Dream Cruise. And I seem to recall somebody saying that is not the actual official Monkey Mobile, but that it is, in fact, a very, very nice replica. And so, of course, the Monkees had their own car, as many of the television people from the 60s and 70s did. And, of course, the Monkey Mobile is a very, very cool vehicle. Unlike some of the other cars, it had this, seat 4 people. Unlike, I don't know, Grandpa Munster's his car. If he's driving it by himself, it only needs to have room for 1. So you got the Monkey Mobile with room for 4, and another cool car. I think that's a George Barris car. I think I could be wrong on that, but it's always cool to see cars like that. And even if they're replicas or tribute cars, when they're done well, they're very, very cool to see. And the Autorama is really good about bringing in vehicles like that, getting vehicles in. So it doesn't matter what you're into, you're going to find stuff. I did not get a photograph of Henry Winkler, but I saw the Fonz. Walked by and saw him, but he was at a table where if you wanted to get a photograph with him and sit down and have him sign it or anything like that, I think it was like $80. And I don't blame him for doing that. I mean, I assume he's going to make a boatload of cash for a weekend. But there's a huge crowd around him. And so I saw him and I just kept walking because I was actually there to see the cars. Flavor Flav was there also. But I got some more cars we can look at here. Like I said, I took a whole bunch of photographs. This one right here is the one that blew my mind. This is a car. It's blue, the color blue, right? It's raised up, and underneath it is a big mirror. So you can see everything underneath it. And this car is making a statement. The people who put this together, the statement they're making is, we don't care if it's the top of the car, side of the car, inside the car, this entire car is perfection, okay? And the way it was lit, I remember walking by it and actually stepping back and then looking at it again and going, I can take a picture of it, but it won't do it justice. I'm looking at it, and finally I came around to this side and I said, look, I'm gonna take a picture from this side. It's the best I can do with a camera phone, right? But I'm looking at it, and it's just gorgeous. It's just gorgeous. And there's a little bit of chrome on there. There's a lot of blue paint on there. But again, everything is cleaned. Everything is perfect. Everything is polished. Somebody actually, and this is what's hard to wrap your head around. Somebody actually climbs underneath this car and polishes the nuts, the bolts, the exhaust pipes, the leaf springs, okay, the floor pan. This car does not have dirt on it. It does not have dust on it. This car is like as clean as an operating suite at a hospital, okay? And you look at that, and it really, I have no other way to describe it, but it's really a celebration of car culture when you find people who love the cars that much, because they're doing it for themselves, but they're also doing it for us. We get to walk by, we get to enjoy it. I don't own that car. And I might never see that car again. But when I walked by it, it was a thing of joy. I'm looking at this car going, that thing is beautiful. That thing is gorgeous. And the amount of work that went into making it that clean and that shiny is just mind-blowing. So we're going to come back and talk some more about the cars I saw at the Autorama right after this on My Michigan Television.
We are connected to our Lake Huron shoreline, all 93 miles of it. Hidden bays and marinas dot our shores. Points of entry to our world. Open waters and waves, alive with people at play. Inspiration floats on sparkling waves. We are in awe of its strength and in love with its allure. We nurture it, play in it, savor it. Huron County Waters.
Looking for the perfect weekend getaway? Love Lansing like a local. And we promise, you'll love Lansing just as much as we do.
Pure is what you make of it. It's feeling the sun warm your skin and a cool lake wash away your cares. Pure is turning a lighthouse into your North Star and letting a ride through the woods turn into dinner by the shore. It's taking it all in and never taking anything for granted. The sun sets, the moon rises, and you realize the end of one perfect summer day is the beginning of another. Pursue your Pure in Pure, Michigan.
Welcome back to My Michigan Television. I'm Steve Lehto. I was off yesterday and the day before. Had a little bit of a cold thing going. Still at the tail end of it right now, but I'll survive. I'm a professional. On Saturday, I went to the Autorama, saw a whole bunch of really cool cars. I took some photographs that I thought would be a good slice of life, a slice of what I saw. And of course, I saw the Superbird, the lemon lime green Superbird. I had to take a photograph of it. I believe that was at a booth for the M1 Concourse in Pontiac. But anytime I see a winged car, I've got to stop because, of course, I wrote a book about the winged cars. There's a Daytona behind me and the Superbird right there. That, of course, is a car they built in 1970 to race in NASCAR. Richard Petty drove one. Pete Hamilton drove one, and so on and so forth. But, of course, that is a great example of one. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with it, so I'm not sure what engine it's got or what transmission it's got, but I love those cars. They built about 1,900 of those cars back in the day. They couldn't get rid of them. You could buy one for about $3,000. Now, if you've got one that's merely complete, worth about $100. If it rolls and drives under its own power, maybe $150. Nicely restored, they've gone for over $1 million with the right combination. So if you got a Hemi 4-speed with low miles, you're looking at real big numbers, especially if it's got original sheet metal and so on. And by the way, in case you're curious, the wing and the nose cone on that car are metal. They are not fiberglass. For some odd reason, people assume that the nose cone is fiberglass. It is actual sheet metal. And the uprights and the wing in the back are also metal. So if you've ever seen the Spice Girls video where they're driving one around and they're sitting on that thing, trust me, it would not hold the weight of even a Spice Girl if it was fiberglass. So that was a Superbird. I saw that walking by. I had to take a picture. But in the grand scheme of things, you're more likely to see something like this at the Autorama. And that, of course, is one of the Batmobiles. I don't know if this is the original one. And I was walking around. I meant to go over and take a picture of the sign that described it, and I forgot. I don't know what I was thinking. But, of course, the original Batmobile made for the TV show is by George Barris. I've met George, very, very nice guy, passed away a few years ago. And he based it on a Ford concept car that he had in his shop. And the studio approached him and said, "We need a car for the Batmobile, on TV. And, have you got something? And we need it really fast." And so he said, "Well, I got a show car here. I can modify it." And so he did a bunch of modifications to it and turned it into that, which is one of the most iconic automobiles on Earth. And the original show, I think, may have had more than one Batmobile, but there's often one they refer to as the Batmobile that I think George Barris got back in his collection and may have later gotten sold. But of course, we know about the guy at Fiberglass Freaks in Indiana who makes replicas that are licensed by the comic book company. And his licensed replicas are perfect. And so if you see one of them, you can't tell them apart from the real thing. So I don't know which one this is or what it is all about, but there's the Batmobile. And that's the kind of thing that the Autorama is so well known for, is the show cars and the famous cars and things of that nature. So I had to get a picture of that because, of course, anybody my age or younger or older knows the Batmobile. Now, I had to take a picture of this. Because this is one of my favorite cars. This, of course, is a convertible Roadrunner. And now the Roadrunner and the GTX, and I know that many people don't care about these definitions, but the Roadrunner and the GTX are both based on the same frame and same platform. It's just a question of how they're outfitted and so on. But you'll notice this vehicle has two things going for it, which are really cool. One of which, of course, is the Hemi. It's got the Hemi. You know that because it's got that big air cleaner, and it's also got the big valve covers. And so the big valve covers on a Chrysler almost always indicate a 426 Hemi. But number two, this vehicle has got an air grabber. And if you look at the top of the hood, the underside of the hood, there is a device there that you can't see from this angle as to what it does. But if you know, you know. If you close that hood, there's a little square of metal in the center of the hood. And underneath the dashboard of the driver is a switch. And you can flip the switch and the thing goes beep and it pops up. And it creates an air scoop. And so the hood scoop is only there if you flip the switch. If you flip the switch the other way, it goes back down again. And so what that hood scoop does, it allows you to get cool air into the engine should you need it for any reason. So you're at a light, some guy's revving his engine because he wants to race you. You flip the switch, you pop up your hood scoop and go, yeah, let's go. And the cool thing is that the side of the air grabber's actually got a little face with teeth on it, like almost like the Flying Tiger airplanes did back in World War II. But the air grabber is one of the coolest options of all time from Chrysler. And of course, with the Hemi, you can't go wrong. But I've always loved that body style. And I like the Dodge Chargers and the Daytonas. Second favorite is that right there. And of course, that would be the basis of the car that they would turn into a Superbird by putting a nose cone and a wing on it, but that'd be the hardtop. They never made any convertible Superbirds. So that, of course, is your Roadrunner. So gotta like that. Not sure if we have any more photographs or not. I think we got one or two more. We've already talked about the Batmobile. Seen that one. I know there's a Chevelle. Bingo. I knew it. Our good friend Adam Lucasell was down there. And Adam Lucasell helped us with our coverage of the Woodward Dream Cruise last year. And he'll probably help us again this year if we ask him. He owns a company called Vintique Cars. And what Vintique does, they buy and sell collector cars, much like my good friend Mark Lieberman. And he's a friend of Mark's. And so I was walking through the show and I see the sign. It goes Vintique Motors. And I see the Chevelle. And I saw Adams. We talked for a while. And I go, so what's the story with this car? And he goes, oh, that's my personal car. He goes, I brought my own car to the show this year. I'm not selling this car. It's not for sale. I have it on display. And I started looking at it. And I go, I got some questions. I go, at first, as I walked by it, it looked very, very stock to me. Very, very stock. Like it's just a Chevelle. And it looks like it came from the factory. So I go, but I notice a few things about it. I did not take close-up photographs because I didn't think anybody cared. But he goes, oh, no. He goes, everything about the car has been redone. And a lot of it's been tweaked just slightly. He goes, so for instance, it's got fuel injection, but it's also got an air cleaner. So it looks like it doesn't have fuel injection. And he did a bunch of things like that. And he didn't do it. The guy he bought the car from did. So some guy bought the car. It was all falling apart, needed to be rebuilt. And he could have rebuilt it back to stock. And he thought to himself, why why go stock? We've got things that have happened in the last 50 years with technology that we can upgrade it a little bit. So they balanced and blueprinted the engine, as they say, fuel injection, all kinds of other stuff. And he says now at the rear wheels, it puts out like 500 horsepower. None of this gross horsepower at the crank. We're talking about at the rear wheels, okay? And he goes, this car is so fast and so loud. It's amazing. And he said the car actually came from Michigan. He bought it from a guy, apparently, who brought it to a car show up in Frankenmuth a couple of years ago. And he saw the car and he fell in love with it. And he met the guy and worked something out. So beautiful, beautiful car. And that, of course, is a Chevelle. And that's from the meaty part of the curve with respect to the cars I liked growing up. I remember seeing those cars on the road when they came out going, that's a very, very good looking car. That has cowl induction. And so, like I told you about the Roadrunner that had the flip up air grabber hood scoop, that thing has got at the base of the windshield, but as part of the hood, a little thing that flips up like this that allows it to bring in cool air from above the hood at the base of the windshield. So if the car's driving down the road, there's a high pressure spot at the base of the windshield. So normally the air would go up and over the car, but as a high pressure builds up there, if you flip up the cowl induction, cool air can come in that way also. And I've always been impressed because there was a period of time where the car companies actually did things like shaker hoods, air grabbers, cowl induction, and they got away from that in the early 70s. And the rumor was that it was the EPA. I believe that's what it was. I think the EPA was upset with how loud the cars became because a car with an actual air grabber, you know, when you step on the gas, it makes more noise. And a lot of the noise is coming from the front end, not out the tailpipe. So it's interesting they did that, but I like that car also. So I had a great time talking to Adam down there, and I'm sure we'll probably see him at the Woodward Dream Cruise this year as well. So that's my photographic evidence of going to the Autorama. And again, these are the photographs, scrolling through them really quickly here. But that was just literally 1/100th of what was there. But I thought it was a good encapsulation of all the kinds of stuff you'd see there. And like I said, 99% of it American made. And I know some people who go, Steve, no one cares about that anymore. That might be. But I can tell you that people like me notice it. And it's because people like me are the ones who are bringing cars there. I didn't bring a car there, but a lot of the guys who did looked a lot like me. And I also even talked to a guy. There was a guy there who had a Viper. I didn't get a picture of him, but a guy had a Viper. I stopped and said, hey, how you doing? My name's Steve. I've got a Viper also. We exchanged notes. His was a little bit newer than mine, but we had a very nice conversation. And so that's the whole point of the Autorama. It's a celebration of car culture, but especially the people who collect cars, restore cars, and modify cars. So there you go. This is My Michigan Television. We have to talk about the weather because I like to do that from time to time because a major winter storm could land in southeast Michigan on Friday. So we got hit with an ice storm not so long ago. A lot of people lost power. A lot of people are still apparently without power, still. And Mark Hicks writes for the Detroit News that southeast Michigan could see a repeat of stormy, wintry weather within days. A strong low-pressure system arrives Friday in the region with heavy precipitation and significant mixed precipitation and snow amounts possible, according to the National Weather Service. Be sure to monitor future updates as this low-pressure system has the makings for a major winter storm across portions of the state. Before that, a brief, light, wintry mix of rain, snow, or freezing drizzle is possible north of M59 in southeast Michigan into Wednesday morning, according to the Weather Service. A small window for rain, snow showers are expected tomorrow in the late morning hours as a warm front pushes through, which will create a strong temperature gradient over southeast Michigan for afternoon highs. Highs could reach the 50s on Wednesday. So it could get warm today, although I show a high of 47 on my forecast. It's about 37, 38 right now. The average high for March 1st is 40 degrees. The record high was 64, set back in 1992. Temperatures are set to top out in the low 40s on Thursday and drop into the 30s at night. Forecast follows an ice storm that spurred hundreds of thousands of outages across the state back on February 22nd, and then another system Monday that resulted in more outages. DTE and consumers remained working around the clock to restore power to some 58,000 customers who are still in the dark as of last night. So they're working on it. They've got great conditions to be working on it, but 58,000 people. We don't know how many of those are from the original storm or from the second storm, but sadly, Friday, we've got more coming. And so I've mentioned before that when that big storm came through in 1978, I believe it was, when we lost power. And it's the only time I remember as a child where we lost power for any significant amount of time. It was several days that we lost power. And as a kid, it was more of an adventure than anything else. But, you know, I've lost power as an adult for half a day or a full day. I don't think it's ever been more than a full day, though. And so for someone to be without power all this time, you can think about all the difficulties of that, especially, you know, you start thinking long-term effects of the house, you know, cold. And, you know, now luckily right now it's not below freezing outside, but at nights it does drop that low. So 47 for a high today, snow on Friday, and then they're calling for rain on Monday. And most of the forecast, if you look forward from today, most of the forecast has highs above freezing. So we're certainly getting out of the coldest part of winter, but winter, like, you know, it's Michigan. It'll stick around for a while. It's the guests that wouldn't leave. And that's what happens every single year, it seems. So I have the utmost sympathy for anybody who's without power and has been without power for all this time. You know, nowadays you think about this stuff. I mean, my internet goes down for 5 minutes and I start panicking. And that's the good news, I guess, nowadays, is that with smartphones, right? As long as you got a place to charge your smartphone, at least you've got some connection. I remember being, you know, in a home with no power and not having a battery-powered radio. And then literally you're in the dark, figuratively and literally. So that's a bad situation to be in. But so hopefully they get the power back on for the 58,000 people who didn't have it last night. And hopefully we won't have much worse on Friday, but there is another storm coming. And that, of course, will be the first event of March. So we'll take a quick break here. We come back, we're going to talk about the effects that electrification of cars is having on the workforce at General Motors right after this on My Michigan Television.
My Michigan TV is streaming everywhere on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV, and more smart TV apps. My Michigan TV is on your phone too. Take us with you wherever you go. Just search for My Michigan TV on your favorite app store or visit mymitv.com. All Michigan, streaming everywhere. My Michigan TV.
Welcome to Mackinac Island.
We were just named the #1 island destination in the continental U.S. by Travel and Leisure magazine.
We are proud of our little slice of paradise.
And hope we have a chance to visit soon.
So hop on in and treat yourself
to fascinating history,
delicious island traditions,
and an unforgettable nightlife.
We look forward to seeing you soon on Mackinac Island.
Don't miss out! Download the My Michigan TV mobile app to stay up to date with all of our programming.
Electric cars are coming, and many people simply ask, is it time for me to buy one yet? And other than that, don't worry about it too much. But if you worked at a car company, depending on what you do there, it might change your future outlook. So I'll give you an example. My brother was an engineer at Ford Motor Company for years, but he designed suspensions. So if they change the cars from gasoline and internal combustion to electric, well, the cars still need suspensions. So I suspect that his job would have been okay. But suppose you're a powertrain guy and your specialty is working on engine configurations and internal combustion engines. Well, your services might not be as necessary in the future. So GM is cutting hundreds of executive white-collar jobs amid the electrification process. Kalia Hall and Jordan Grzelewski wrote this for the Detroit News a month after CEO Mary Barra said GM was not planning layoffs. The Detroit automaker is cutting about 500 executive level and salaried jobs. So the move, delivered amid impressive profitability, signals the evolving impact of electrification on the big automakers like GM. Company isn't providing the exact number affected in the US and sites overseas. As of December 2022, GM employed about 86,000 hourly employees and 81,000 salaried employees worldwide. Today's action follows our most recent performance calibration and supports managing the attrition curve as part of our overall structural cost reduction effort. A spokesperson said, this action impacts a small number of salaried employees and executives globally. My understanding is, and I've known people at all of the car companies, usually when they do something like this, they'll make an announcement and they're going to say, this department is going to need to lose so many people. Is there anybody here who's willing to just retire early? And they'll often do it that way. And quite often they can hit their goals by simply people saying, you know something? I can retire in 2 years anyways. I'll just quit early. And some people will do that. The job cuts come as other companies and automakers also are offering buyouts, executing layoffs, and making so-called strategically important hires amid economic uncertainty and increasing costs to electrify their fleets. Last spring, Ford Motor Company confirmed it was eliminating 2,000 salary jobs and 1,000 contract positions in a bid to cut costs and boost competitiveness. Late last year, Stellantis offered another round of buyouts to certain salaried employees, but hasn't said how many employees accepted the buyout offers. The CEO has warned the inability to absorb the additional cost of electric vehicles could risk layoffs by shrinking the market. GM is currently investing billions with a B, on electric vehicles. This year, the Detroit automaker expects its capital spending in total to be between $11 billion and $13 billion, up from the $9 to $10 billion it previously expected to spend this year. Much of that is earmarked for electric vehicles. GM is now expected to spend more than $35 billion it previously said it would spend on EVs. And that's going through 2025. We continue to shift resources to electric vehicles with around 75% of our product-specific capital dedicated to EVs and AVs, says GM CFO Paul Jacobson, talking to investors during the January 31st full year 2022 earnings call. Meanwhile, a securities analyst said in a statement that GM is going through a major EV transition, and cost cutting is part of that process. It's a fluid time for the Detroit stalwart as they make this EV transition in 2023 and beyond, with margin stability a laser focus for GM. This year, GM's launching production of the electric versions of the Chevrolet Silverado, the Blazer, and the Equinox. GMC has started production of the Hummer EV, and production is expanding on the pickup version of the Hummer, the Cadillac Lyriq, the electric crossover, and Bright Drop electric delivery vans. During its earnings calls with investors on January 31st, Barra and GM CFO Paul Jacobson said the company wasn't planning any layoffs this year, despite economic pressures and its goal to achieve $2 billion in cost savings over the next 2 years. Jacobson added the automaker expected to have a slightly lower headcount by the end of the year. So the question is, how do you lower the headcount without layoffs? Well, attrition. Some people will retire. Otherwise, you can encourage some people to leave. And if worse comes to worse, you can lay them off. I do want to be clear that we're not planning layoffs, Barra said. We are limiting our hiring to only the most strategically important roles, and we'll use attrition to help manage overall headcount. To achieve $2 billion in cost savings, Jacobson said the company would focus on reducing complexity in all of our products, reducing corporate overhead expenses across the board. I do want to be clear though, we're not planning layoffs. We're limiting our hiring to only the most strategically important roles, and we'll use attrition to help manage overall headcount. So they've stated that clearly. For 2023, GM anticipates adjusted earnings to be in the range of $10.5 billion to $12.5 billion for the year. Last year, the company booked record pre-tax earnings of $14.5 billion. And just think, I remember when they were bankrupt, literally bankrupt. And here we are. To save $6 billion, GM launched a restructuring effort in 2019 that included cutting 6,000 jobs and idling an assembly plant in Lordstown, Ohio, and powertrain plants in Baltimore and Warren. The Oshawa Assembly in Ontario and Factory Zero in Detroit, Hamtramck were also on the list to be idled, but GM saved those too. In a Tuesday letter obtained by the News, GM Chief People Officer Arden Hoffman said, "We are looking at all the ways of addressing efficiency and performance. This week, we are taking action with a relatively small number of global executives and classified employees following our most recent performance calibration. Ford's cuts came after CEO Jim Farley publicly stated the company had too many people. Shortly thereafter, he implemented a reorganization of the company into 3 separate business units focused on combustion engines, EVs, and commercial vehicles. Ford executives in recent months have referenced pervasive dysfunction within the business and the need for further cost reductions, saying that everything is on the table. They've also disclosed what they believe is a $7 to $8 billion cost disadvantage compared to their legacy competitors. Those remarks from top executives came after the Blue Oval missed its earning guidance for 2022 and posted a net loss for the year. Farley's publicly discussed the challenges around pulling off what he calls a double transformation involving building out a new growth business around EVs and software, while at the same time repairing the legacy business that is underpinning the costly shift to plug-in vehicles. Ford also recently announced plans to cut 3,800 jobs in Europe as part of a broader effort to revitalize its Europe business amid rapidly changing market conditions and an increasingly competitive EV market. The push to cut costs comes as automakers are spending enormous amounts of money on electrical vehicle design, electrical vehicle manufacturing, electric vehicle planning, but are not yet making any money with those electrical vehicles. And that squeeze is affecting the rest of their operations. And that's an economic group guy giving an opinion. Automakers cannot avoid the impact of reducing U.S. car sales from 16 million units to 14 million, or even 13 million, he said. The plain fact is we're selling fewer cars. Meanwhile, an automotive services company expects 14 million new light-duty vehicle U.S. sales in 2023, up from 13.7 when vehicle dealers had limited supply as a result of supply chain issues. Cox expects February sales to increase year over year with improving inventory and fleet sales increases as well. So that's the tricky part. Car companies grew to the size they were gradually. And as you can imagine, to start a company that large, making anything would be a huge initial investment. And that's kind of where they are right now, because they got to shift everything over to electric vehicles. And not everything translates perfectly. So there's going to be a huge investment at the front end, and then hopefully it pays off down the road. But to get there, it's going to be a lot of money being spent that's not going to be gotten back right away. Now, if you're in the market and you're trying to make these things happen and you build cars, you need to find buyers, right? Well, here you go. The Postal Service, USPS, has gone to Ford and agreed to buy 9,000 electric delivery vehicles. So there you go. How are sales today? I just sold 9,000 vehicles. Riley Beggin for the Detroit News says the U.S. Postal Service awarded a competitive contract yesterday to Ford Motor Company for 9,250 battery electric vehicles. USPS plans to spend around $9 billion on vehicles, the agent said, but it's unclear immediately how much the contract with Ford will be, and the USPS did not immediately answer the question when asked. The Ford E-Transit vehicles will be produced in Kansas City, Missouri, and will begin being delivered in December. Agency also plans to buy 9,250 gas-powered vehicles from Stellantis alongside the EVs to fill the urgent need for vehicles. 3/4 of the agency's acquisitions over the next 5 years will be electric vehicles, and 100% after 2026 will be EVs. Altogether, the Ford and Stellantis purchases equal about $1 billion. So that should help out both of the companies' bottom lines. USPS also awarded competitive contracts to 3 suppliers for more than 14,000 EV charging stations that will recharge delivery vehicles at postal facilities. We are moving forward with our plans to simultaneously improve our service, reduce our cost, grow our revenue, and improve the working environment for employees. That's the postmaster speaking. Electrification of our vehicle fleet is now an important component of those initiatives. Agency has not yet determined where the new vehicles will be deployed. It says chargers will go to at least 75 locations within the next year. The Inflation Reduction Act appropriated additional funding for USPS to buy electric vehicles. Agency estimates the funding will help them get 66,000 EVs as part of an overall purchase of 106,000 new delivery trucks. USPS's path to electrification has been politically fraught. Agency first announced in 21 it would make only 10% of its new fleet electric, but the president's administration and Democrats in Congress pushed back, and several Democrat-led states sued to stop the plan. USPS slowly ramped up the percentage of the fleet it promised it would make electric before settling on the 62% it plans on today. So there you go. The Postal Service placing some very large orders, electric vehicles with Ford, gas vehicles with Chrysler. I'm sure it's welcome news at both places. If you worked at a plant that built those vehicles, they go, oh, we just got an order for thousands more. You're like, thank you. So I can tell you that the mail truck that delivers mail to my house, if I'm home and the mail gets dropped off, I know because I hear the mail truck. It's got a bad exhaust. I've lived here for years, and for years, the mail truck has a bad exhaust. It's the exact same truck with the exact same bad exhaust, and I hear it go by, oh, the mail's here. Saturday, mail's here. And it's funny because I often bike and run around my neighborhood. I see other mail trucks. And if I don't hear the bad exhaust, I know it's not my mailman. If I hear the bad exhaust, oh, hey, how you doing? And we know each other, we wave. He knows who I am. I know who he is. He's the guy in the mail truck with the bad exhaust. And I don't understand because I'm of the belief that the Postal Service has got different area, like regional facilities, right? And so I have a P.O. box that I get my mail at for my YouTube channel. And that small postal office there does not have any of its own vehicles, okay? A woman comes in, sorts the mail, and hands it out and works the desk. That's it. But there's other central facilities nearby that they have a fleet of trucks. And they load them all up with mail, and they take them out and deliver. And I was under the impression that along with the fleet of trucks, they'd have a couple of mechanics on hand who would fix things. Now, it's possible that somebody just decided, well, that exhaust on that one truck is not a priority. Ever? Like if you were the guy and it's your job and you get to drive a truck all day long, but they give you the one with the bad exhaust every single day, wouldn't you say, hey, can we get this exhaust fixed sooner or later? Or does he not know? Because maybe he's gotten used to it. But I mean, I'm not kidding you. I see a mail truck go by, and all of a sudden one goes by with a bad exhaust. Oh, hey, there's my mail truck. And every single time it goes by, I think to myself, oh, they still haven't fixed it yet. Now, it's possible that somewhere down the road, they're going to fix the exhaust on the mail truck, and then I'll be bummed because I won't know when the mail came. I never heard the truck. Oh, the mail's here. Oh, so as of right now, I'm not really complaining. It's more one of those things that I noticed and I'm curious about, because I just thought, well, they got to have a depot of some sort where they keep these vehicles. They've got to maintain them, change the oil, air filters, right? Don't they put it up on a hoist once in a while and look underneath it? And if there's big old holes you can poke your finger through in the exhaust, I mean, isn't that something? No? But like I said, I'm perfectly happy right now because as it is right now, I hear it coming and go, oh, the mail's coming. The mail's coming. So we're going to be back in just a second talking about the Michigan tax situation or talking about cutting taxes and or giving people money, but there's a fight over that right after this on My Michigan Television. Welcome back to My Michigan Television. In Michigan, they've been talking about a tax rebate or cutting taxes or both because the state came up. It turns out they have a little bit more money than they should. And so every time that happens, they talk about what they can do about it. So the Senate has now killed the $180 checks from Michigan tax filers, but they've kept the income tax rate rollback alive. Paul Egan from the Free Press explains that the plan to send the $180 checks to all Michigan filers died yesterday when the Michigan Senate sent the governor a package of tax changes without enough votes to give the bill immediate effect. Also Tuesday, the Senate passed another supplemental spending bill, which totals $1.3 billion for the current fiscal year and includes $630 million in site development costs and other incentives aimed at a proposed Ford Motor Company electric vehicle battery plant near Marshall. Now, the House Bill 4016 also would send another $170 million to the state's Economic Development Fund, which is used to pay large incentives to companies looking to build or expand manufacturing operations. That bill, which received enough Republican votes to get immediate effect, now moves to the state House. The legislature's final passage of the tax measures bill without a 2/3 vote also means the bill will not prevent an expected 0.2 percentage point rollback in Michigan's personal income tax. The bill does reduce taxes on certain retirement income and increases Michigan's earned income tax credit from 6% of the federal credit to 30% of the federal credit. The plan to issue the $180 checks would have reduced general fund revenue for the fiscal year by $800 million, enough to prevent those revenues from exceeding the cap spelled out in a 2015 law and triggering a reduction in Michigan's income tax rate from 4.25% to 4.05%. That reduction was looking more likely to happen Tuesday, but was still not certain. The final word on the size of Michigan's general fund revenues for the 2022 fiscal year will be the annual comprehensive financial report expected to be published in the next couple of weeks. Some lawyers with ties to the governor's administration have questioned whether the 2015 law that provides the rollback is constitutional. Others have interpreted the wording in the law to provide for a one-time reduction, not a permanent reduction. Wording in the bill said the $180 checks would only be sent out if the legislation was granted immediate effect. Democrats hailed the targeted tax relief contained in the bill. This historic legislation tackles long-standing Democratic policies to provide significant support to our fellow Michiganders who need it the most, says a senator from Royal Oak. Republicans congratulated themselves on standing firm against a measure they said would prevent a permanent rollback in the income tax rate by refusing to grant the bill immediate effect. So, of course, everyone's arguing about what all of it means. and who knows, I think it's a small fractional discount in the income tax rate, which most people won't notice. So enough of that. Let's get the important business. TikTok has now set a default time for minors. Oh, I always joke about TikTok because it's something that I don't do, and I know the kids do it. And people complain and say, well, there's kids out there who live with their phone like this, and all they do is watch TikTok videos all day long. So TikTok is setting a default time limit for minors, which of course is not going to work, but let's talk about it. Michelle Chapman wrote this to the Associated Press. They said today that every account that's held by a user under the age of 18 will have a default 60-minute daily screen time limit in the coming weeks. Change arrives during a period in which there are growing concerns among different governments about the app's security. Families have struggled with limiting the amount of time their children spend on the video sharing app, which is, of course, Chinese owned. And all someone's got to do is create a second account or a third account, or maybe lie about their age. It's not like they ask you to show them identification or something. It's like that, am I a robot? Yes or no? Are you above 18? Yes. Okay. Head of trust and safety at TikTok said in a blog post Wednesday that when the 60-minute limit is reached, minors will be prompted to enter a passcode, which they will have to get, and make an active decision to keep watching. For accounts where the user is under the age of 13, a parent or guardian will have to set or enter an existing passcode to allow 30 minutes of extra viewing time once the initial 60-minute limit is reached. TikTok said it came up with a 60-minute threshold by consulting academic research and experts from the Digital Wellness Lab at Boston Children's Hospital. Social media executives, including those at TikTok, have been called before Congress to explain how they're preventing harm for young users. TikTok also said Wednesday that it will begin prompting teens to set a daily screen time limit if they opt out of the 60-minute default. The company will send weekly inbox notifications to teen accounts with a screen time recap. Some of TikTok's existing safety features for teen accounts include having accounts set to private by default for those between the ages of 13 and 15, and providing direct messaging availability only to those accounts where the user is 16 years old or older. TikTok announced a number of changes for all users, including the ability to set customized screen time limits for each day of the week, and allowing users to set a schedule to mute notifications. Outside of exorbitant use by some minors, there are growing concerns about the app around the world. The European Parliament, the European Commission, and the EU Council have all banned TikTok from being installed on official devices. We've all seen the photographs of some guy sitting on the house floor playing solitaire on his laptop. And the modern equivalent now is sitting there watching TikTok videos that follows similar actions taken by the U.S. federal government, Congress, and more than half of the 50 U.S. states. Other half of the 50 U.S. states apparently allow people to put TikTok on a government phone. Canada has also banned TikTok from their devices as well. So there you go. Got to let you know, by the way, Michigan Fun is on My Michigan Television. They got a show Thursday night, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Mike Sukent talking to people at the Marquette Builders Show, talking about the Bay City St. Patrick's Day races, and the Michigan Hero Museum in Frankenmuth, the Museum for Michigan Heroes in Frankenmuth. So Mike Sukent from Michigan Fun talking right here on My Michigan Television about Michigan Fun. What could be more appropriate than that? And look, I made it through the entire show without having a coughing fit. I'm back. I'm back. So I'll see you tomorrow right here on My Michigan Television, 11 to 12, as always. Until then, behave yourself. Bye-bye.
The heart of winter. It beats inside you. It's that thing urging you outside when the forecast calls for snow. Some were born with it.